Alright, so we're going to run through the presentation about Denmark right now, which was where I went over the summer. And I guess to go back to the first screen, a big part of Danish culture is this idea of coming to consensus, which is coming to like big group decisions, but still valuing the individual and still allowing individuals to maintain their autonomy. And that's a really difficult balance to strike because consensus is about group decisions and doing things as a group, but they also want to make sure that everybody has their individuality. And I think that that's kind of something within your own small groups that you're working in right now that you guys are really striving to balance and to figure out. So just a cool, silly fact. Denmark has the oldest amusement park in the world. It's called Tivoli. And when Walt Disney was developing his idea for Disney World, this is where he came, and he based Disney World off of Tivoli. So just in general, Danes are a group of people that tend to make these consensus building decisions. Everybody in the group is going to discuss every point of view before any decision is made. In fact, it's such a part of their culture that politically, whenever a bill comes to vote, everybody knows how that vote is going to go. So, like their version of our Senate, if anything ever came to a vote in their Senate, everyone would know if that bill was going to pass or not, because there would be a consensus within the Senate before the vote even happened. Having said that, they still really respect the individual and their individual choices. Because they spend a lot of time on this idea of making decisions and the fact that individuals are supposed to make their own decisions, everyone understands that there are consequences for the decisions that you make. And so it's anticipated and it's expected that before you make a decision, you really think through what the long-term impacts of those decisions are going to be. Because of that, they also understand that the good of the group, or I guess in spite of that, they understand that the good of the group can trump an individual's ambitions. There's an expectation that you're not only going to look at the consequences for yourself, but the consequences for everyone as a whole and for your future generations. So not just looking at how this is going to impact me in the next 5 years, but looking at how this will impact my children and my great-grandchildren and all the way through. So that impacts a lot of their energy policy and the fact that they've invested a lot of money and time into renewable energies when right now those are not the most financially effective things to do, but they understand that in the coming generations, renewable energy is going to have to be what people use, and at that time, they'll be able to reap the rewards. Danes are also extremely private and extremely direct people. If you ask a question, you can anticipate getting a very direct, to-the-point answer. There are also some questions that you cannot really ask. Asking somebody how they're doing is considered taboo, something that you don't want to do because you can offend them. How you're doing, that's a personal question. You're asking about their emotions, you're asking about how they're relating to the world, and being a very private group of people, they're not going to share that with someone that they've just known. So you can ask, how is your day going? How are things with your job? But you can't ask very private questions or ask people how their feelings are. Next, Danes are very aware of nature, and that goes back to that whole good of the group sometimes. Wind turbines generate 28% of their electricity that they produced in 2011, which is really cool. They burn their garbage, and that does two things. It generates electricity, and also it generates this it's steam that is so highly condensed when they put it into their pipes that run through their city that it provides hot water and heat in city areas. So when they burn their garbage, it then provides the energy needed to heat water so that people can always have a constant stream of running water or hot water. And it also provides heat in the urban areas, which is incredibly cool. Like, nobody has to pay for their heat because they essentially pay for their heat when they pay their garbage bill. extremely cool. This country as a whole plans to be free of fossil fuels by 2050, and they're getting ready to be, I think by 2035, they're going to be at 70% of that, which is also really, really cool. To give you a point of reference, I think our country is somewhere around like 10% renewable energy, not even. And they obviously almost triple where we are. And they have a long-term plan. So here's my little trip to the dump that I went on. The dump experience was really, really, really cool.
Living is so tough, scraping floors on your hands and knees. City living can get so hot when it's 103 degrees.
If you have any questions about any of the particular pictures that you saw in there, please feel free to ask me. There are a couple that I just want to point out. Let's see. So one big thing is that they set up this waste lab so that people could come to the dump and see where their money was going, because a lot of money is invested in these incineration plants, and they want people and children to come and see what's going on. In fact, educating youth is a huge, huge part of where some of their funding goes and where a lot of their energy goes. They want to make sure that the next generation understands the idea of the environment and how to be conscious of it. It smelled. It was pretty gross. I was blown away by the fact that there was this mural that they painted on the inside of their dumps because it smelled bad and you can't really do anything about how it smells, so they wanted to make sure that it was attractive to the people that were working there. And I don't know if we think things through quite so thoroughly and are respectful of some of our more blue-collar people in the United States. It was a really interesting experience. That's huge. And it's used to pick up the garbage and then move it so that it's closer to the fire so it can get pushed in. Another one of the murals, this was an educational mural to show how after the turbines turn to produce the electricity, electricity gets taken into the cities, and also to show how that hot water is heated. And over here, I just thought it was funny that on this mural they have two people fighting, fist fighting with each other. Another example of humor was this, because honestly, somebody got bored and drew a smiley face on the down, like this going down the stairs exit thing. It was great. I guess going here, the tower was so tall, the smokestack, that it looks like it's tilted, which is just cool. Thought it would be interesting. It's actually a straight arrow all the way up, or a straight tube all the way up. Alright, moving on. So Denmark is the home of a lot of things that are important to Western culture. One of them is existentialism, which is a philosophy that kind of revolves around the idea that life is only valued based off of our impact on other people and the decisions that we make, and then the consequences of the decisions. Soren Kierkegaard was the first philosopher who really started to articulate these ideas, and unlike many of the people that came after him, he was a very faith-filled Christian, and many existentialists after him were all very, very staunch atheists and just could not reconcile the idea of God and freedom of choice and the two being married together. And he, I think, does a good job of articulating how the two things go together. And I love him. I think he's great. I've tried to understand what he wrote. A lot of it's really heady. But more than anything, he believed that sometimes when we get faced with decisions, we become so paralyzed by this fear of what if I decide wrong, that we either stop thinking through our decision making and we just kind of go based off of impulse to avoid thinking through the decision-making process, or we become completely paralyzed and we never make a decision, because if every decision that we make impacts the rest of who we are, then to a certain degree, eternity can be found in every decision, and that's terrifying. Another big thing, that Denmark is known for is its Vikings. Like, Vikings, the people, were from there. They're best known for being explorers and then for plundering and looting and bringing things back and being rich and wealthy. Not all Vikings were like that. In fact, very few Vikings were like that. But the idea of exploring is a huge part of Danish culture. And we went to the Viking Museum at Roskilde, and it was really, really cool. They had some reconstructions, recreated ships outside. And they also had some great explanations of what the different ships were and where they originally found, like, the prototype of that kind of ship. Inside the museum were the remains of these 4 ships that were sunk 5, 6, 7, 800 years ago. And what had happened was there was like a bay, and the Viking people, because they knew that people were going to try to come in and take over Denmark, they didn't want, I guess they wanted to be able to control how people came into the bay, how they came into the harbor. So they took some of their old ships that they really didn't care about anymore, and they just sunk them in the middle of the bay so that people would be routed to come into the bay using a very predetermined route. So then the Danes could control and could defend themselves better. Luckily, they did sink these 4 ships, and somehow they ended up resting on top of each other and not completely falling apart and decaying. So they were able to pull up these 4 ships. And it's, like I said, really, really cool. So the metal castings around it just kind of provide the ribs and the shape, but this is what they've been able to recover. The ships were used for different things. The fatter-bodied ones like this one were used to transport a lot of different materials, everything from ship to grain and barley. These were wood ships. Like, everything was really tightly fit together. You can see on some of them, like right here, they had to put in some replacement pieces. Overall, the whole trip to the Viking Museum was just really cool, and the people that we talked to were very, very helpful and very, very kind. Other things about Vikings, they're kind of the first pirates. Okay, maybe not really, but kind of. They explored a lot, and Danes still really pride themselves on their willingness to go outside and experience things that are maybe a little bit outside of their comfort zone, to travel and to interact with people. They did plunder some of the towns that they took over. They brought back technologies, they brought back foods, they brought back ideas and textiles, and so it turned Denmark into this really rich center of thinking and of trying new things out. They also traded a lot. I mean, they were explorers, so they had things to share and to trade. They had money, so they could take things from other people, or I guess buy things from other people. So they were able to bring back a lot of different ideas, but also a lot of different foods. And you know Mrs. Livingston, and that she's kind of a fat kid and loves to do nothing but eat. So this was a great country to eat in. There were a lot of different flavors and spices, and things were mixed in a way that you wouldn't think about, because to the Danish people, it's all the world at large, and so they were very